Hello, once again, one and all. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Fantasy Index podcast for the 2024 NFL season. Training camps league-wide are now underway. It's time to start your engines, folks. It is going to be training camp hype season by the end of the week, if it's not already. I'm already starting to see, some of the guys that I'm excited for getting some little hype type videos on online, and yeah, it's starting to get pretty fun.
I'm excited to not see any more Michael Gallup hype, to be honest. I know I'm going to come right out and just say it. Like, it just seems like for maybe 4 or 5 years, I think he had a decent finish. There was 1 year, but it just he finally retired. Breaking news, I would say. It's funny. I see some of the captions sometimes on articles. It's like, star wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys retires suddenly, and it's like, star, huh? Yeah.
Well, they wear a star on their helmet, Colt.
You're right. You're onto something there.
All right, so we are going to dive in. Our main course tonight is going to be guys that we're a little skittish about at their current market prices in redraft leagues. Before that, though, just a reminder, head on over to the Fantasy Index website if you haven't already. Go into the store section and you can pick up all your 2024 draft kit needs. Get your magazine ordered if you haven't already, electronic or print editions.
You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon now.
That's right. Yeah, we have it on Amazon now too. What was the price check on that at last check there, Colt?
I'm looking at it right now. $12.59.
A bargain.
You get yourself one of these bad boys.
Oh yeah. We don't have Brady
last year's, but it does not have Brady on the cover. No, that book was a lot more than $12.
Right. So yeah, anything that you need for 2024, whether it's pre-draft rankings or in-season weekly rankings on who to start and sit, who to pick up, all that stuff, we got you covered in the store. All right, we are going to launch now headlong into just kind of a smattering. There are definitely other guys that I'm not crazy about at their current price tags, but the guys that kind of stand out at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, who are the guys, kind of big name guys, prominent. We're not talking about, avoid Jalen McMillan for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or anything like that. And don't avoid him, by the way. He's good. Anyway, Colt, why don't you take us away here? Who is the quarterback that his ADP has you kind of wrinkling your nose at?
I'm completely fading him. I love the player. The NFL loved the player last year when he won Offensive Rookie of the Season. That's CJ Stroud.
Wow.
Yeah,
Bold.
I know. You have to pick somebody who you're fading on.
True.
And this one is a little bit easier for me. He's going off the board at the end of the 4th round. It's the quarterback 5. Some quarterbacks that are nearby him, which we'll discuss that in a little bit, but some of the quarterbacks that are going nearby him, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson. See a common theme between those two?
Right.
They run the ball.
Yep.
I've been doing a lot of Superflex mocks here on Sleeper, and CJ Stroud is going off the board in the top 5, which blows my mind. I mean, like I say, it's a quarterback 5, so kind of adds up there. But I think it's insane. He finished the season last season, a great rookie season, I might add. He ended the season as the quarterback 11. I think some people are forgetting that. Now they're drafting him into this season. Yes, he was a rookie. Yes, they added 30-year-old Stephon Diggs. Yes, he should have had more touchdowns for all of the yards that he threw. And I know that I saw that you mentioned in here he missed 2 games. He was on about a 4,600 yard pace, but he only had 4,100 yards and 23 touchdowns. Like I said, that wasn't really proportional. He should have had more passing touchdowns, and he only threw for 5 interceptions, which also boosted his production there, because that's a very good touchdown to interception ratio. But I want to preference something here. So I went back in some of the data. I went back 10 years, and I found 2014 Big Ben. He threw for 4,900 yards, 32 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Would you say that's about where CJ Stroud could probably be?
Best case.
Yeah, 4,900 yards, 32 touchdowns. That's a really, really nice season.
Yeah.
He was the quarterback 6 on the season. Big Ben was there. If he had those numbers last year, CJ Stroud, if he had those numbers last year, he would have been good enough for the quarterback 7. It's the same for 2022. And it would have been the quarterback 12 in 2021 and 2020. So, like, when you're drafting him at quarterback 5, he has to produce that 4,900, that 32 touchdowns, 9 interceptions or better for him to really produce at that. That's the hardest part for me. Like I said, if he doesn't have 5,000 yards and 35 touchdowns, you're kind of, left holding, holding CJ Stroud. And you have to start him because you drafted him at that, that high cost, in the fourth round. So CJ Stroud's my fade.
My gut is to call you, to call into question your credibility because Colt, you idiot, don't you know that the Texans are the greatest thing since sliced bread? Everyone wants pieces of the Texans. What are you talking about? But then when I stopped foaming at the mouth and I remember, yes, the FOMO is real. We do want the Texans because they might be the best offense in the league, or at least in the conference in 2024. That could absolutely happen. That's not how quarterback works in most leagues, depending on your scoring, because most leagues give you what is called 0.04 points per passing yard. And if that is the case in your league, if you're gonna spend like that on your quarterback, he has to add value as a rusher. Period. Unless if you're gonna take a quarterback that high that doesn't add a lot of value as a runner, it has to be Patrick Mahomes. I know Stroud is set up very nicely here to go out and maybe hit 4,800 yards. But is he gonna produce more points per game than Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes? Probably not. Historically, probably not. You have to believe in this guy really hard to take him at that price point. So yeah, I totally agree.
I will add to that, Patrick Mahomes, I actually didn't know. Do you know how many rushing yards he had last season? Do you want to guess?
If I were to guess, I would say it was a little bit of an uptick just because nobody was open for so much of the season. Lay it on me.
He had 380.
Not bad.
At 350 the season before, 380 the season before.
That's
pretty good. That's a good rushing baseline. CJ Stroud is not even half of that. So,
and he's got more athleticism than that. I don't know why they didn't let him run, but whatever.
It's much like Michael Penix, but
right, fair. I agree. Now I will say it's not a bad pick if you take him there, because he's not. I don't think he's going to burn you, but I just don't think there's a lot of value. There's not a lot of meat on the bone there, so I would tend to avoid it, which kind of is where I'm at with my guy. And you already know where I'm going because I'm always picking on this guy, Lamar Jackson. He's currently going as the quarterback 4, 41 overall in a blend of Yahoo and RT Sports ADP data right now. And my problem with that is basically that Jackson he's one of only 2 quarterbacks in the top 9 by ADP right now that is not either coming off of a season his last full season with at least 36 total touchdowns, or is a second year quarterback. I'm talking about Stroud and Anthony Richardson specifically. So I know I pick on Lamar a lot. It gives me no joy to do so. He is a great player in reality, and I like his odds of leading the Ravens to another division title. But last year was the 5th consecutive year that his rushing yards per game dropped off, and the 4th consecutive year that he failed to produce even 30 touchdowns. He's just so much better in reality than he is in fantasy, and everything had to go right last year, really, for him to get that quarterback 4 finish. Burrow got hurt. I don't think Trevor Lawrence would have threatened him for the top 5 spot, but Lawrence was banged up. Stroud misses 2 games, otherwise he probably gets into the vicinity potentially. So, and again, in 2023, that was before Derrick Henry showed up. So now, if there was going to be sort of a Lamar, red zone area touchdown renaissance, that's done. I feel like you're taking the guy at best case scenario. He gets you to quarterback 5, quarterback 6 in all likelihood, and you're taking him higher than that. So I know it's fun to have a marquee household name as the hood ornament on your fantasy team, but it's not necessarily the best strategy in one quarterback redraft leagues.
I'm not fading Lamar. So I'm not totally sold on him. I don't like to go early run quarterback like that. It's hard because the fantasy community is getting much smarter, and so these rushing quarterbacks like Lamar, when I got him for his MVP season, it was all the way back at the end of the draft. It was a no-brainer, and I think a lot of people. I'm not tooting my own horn. A lot of people were drafting him like that.
He won me a title as well.
Yeah, and it's just that doesn't happen anymore because the fantasy community is getting sharp, sometimes too sharp, and maybe we'll be discussing that here in a little bit. But yeah, Lamar, I just like the rushing upside. I know that it's dropped off just a little bit, but he, as you mentioned, didn't have Mark Andrews, Zay Jones, Zay Flowers, is taking taking a little bit of an uptick there because he wasn't a rookie. We're both not high on Zay Flowers in general, and
Correct.
maybe that's part of why we're not high on Lamar Jackson. But I think it's just a easy baseline. If I was betting on probably like there's probably maybe 5 quarterbacks that could be first overall, like QB1. I think Lamar has that opportunity to be that. But I will agree with you on the fact that he when you're drafting him, it is closer to the ceiling than it is his floor.
And he also played 17 games or 16 games. He sat out week 18 because they didn't have anything left to play for. But without Mark, I mean, in Lamar's defense, I think he is set up to have the most passing yards of his career potentially in 2024. I do believe that. And he was quarterback 1 2 out of the last 4 games down the stretch last year. So we're talking fantasy playoffs time without Mark Andrews. So again, kind of like with Stroud, I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I'm just saying there's no room for him to hit above that. Josh Allen is going to outproduce Lamar Jackson per game. Jalen Hurts very likely is going to outproduce Lamar Jackson per game. And I mean, already then you've got two quarterbacks that are going to beat him. And that's, what if Lamar gets hurt? What if, Jordan Love or Kyler Murray goes insane? And, it's just, it's casino odds logic, basically. So, and honorable mention, Dak Prescott, quarterback 9. I'm not a fan.
Quarterback 9. Where's that putting him in?
61 overall, I believe.
61. Okay, so that's the end of the 5th ish.
In 12, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty pricey, I would say. He had a stretch though. If you're talking about saying like a Jordan Love or Brock Purdy having a first overall season, Dak kind of had that. It doesn't help that CeeDee Lamb's kind of not practicing right now, holding out for a contract, rightfully so. But
I just think touchdown regression, honestly, like the odds of throwing that many touchdowns again are just, I'm going to bet against it.
Are they going to be running the ball? And if so, with who? I mean, we kind of tried to answer that earlier, but I digress.
We'll have a Cowboys episode, Colt. I'll unfurl
whole separate
all
pod.
My I'm a Cowboys fan, as you'll recall. I'll unfurl all my pessimistic tinfoil hat theories about 2024, but we got to talk about our running back fades, my boy.
I got you. I'm going to start it off. DeAndre Swift. So he's going off the board as the running back 24 in the middle of the 4th round. Some of the running backs that are going nearby him, you've got James Conner, David Montgomery, Najee Harris, Raheem Mostert. He's mainly a fade. Swift is mainly a fade because I love all these other running backs so much more. I just think that, they've got safer jobs. Not that Khalil Herbert or Roshan Johnson should be scaring you, but they're not pushovers either. They've shown production a little bit here, even just last year. Swift, he got paid. Yeah, the Bears should be a better offense, but you're going from Philly could have arguably been the top ranked offensive line last season. They're certainly top 3. And now you're going to the Bears, which are a bottom 5. So offensive line plays a huge play into this. But not only that, he went from 3rd team in 3 years. He went from the Lions, who's had a great offensive line. He went to the Eagles, who had a great offensive line.
True.
And he showed flashes. He had his games, of course, but he never finishes like a high, production running back. Was it better than running back 24 where he's being drafted right now? Yeah, but not by much. Like, I don't feel like the ceiling is there. When I'm drafting a running back, I want to have some kind of ceiling. I feel like it's non-existent, with DeAndre Swift. And yeah, he's not somebody who I'm projecting to have a good season, mainly because he's going from good offense, bad offensive line. And the other running backs are just so much better around him, in my opinion.
I disagree partially. Okay. I will say the running backs going around him are a compelling argument. James Conner, I definitely prefer. Raheem Mostert is a great value, especially if you take Devon Achane, you almost have to get Mostert because it's you can't have one without the other if you can help it. But David Montgomery, Najee Harris, I know Montgomery's great, but he has lost kind of like Najee has lost all access to the passing down work. In full PBR, that hurts. That hurts bad. So
is Swift going to have the passing game work? I feel like he's like the 4th target, right?
Well. So the Bears have, whatever, it's training camp talk, but the Bears have at least said the right things about it, saying, oh, yeah, DeAndre Swift, the Eagles they kind of basically said that the Eagles made a mistake not getting this guy more involved as a receiver. We're going to fix that. And so this is me personally. I understand I'm in the minority I'm outside consensus on this. I don't think Rashawn Johnson's a guy. I just don't believe it. He's never been a guy. Like I know he was behind Bijan Robinson at Texas, generational talent. He should have been more involved still, if that were the case. And just the eyeball, I mean, it's kind of a cop-out, but just the eyeball test, I just don't see it. Like, and he came to running back late, like he was a high school quarterback, and came to running back in college, and it shows to me. Like, it just, I don't see it with Roschon. So I think, and keep in mind, Ryan Poles drafted this guy just last year, and what does he do this offseason? He goes out and pays DeAndre Swift not insignificant money, and Khalil Herbert is an orphan from the previous regime. Poles did not draft him, and there are rumblings that Herbert might be on the trade block. So I'm if I had that same calculus as you on those surrounding running backs, then I would probably feel the same way. Because I don't, I feel like Swift is a lot safer there. But again, basically, if James Conner gets sniped and you're kind of on a running back island there where you need a running back, you don't necessarily love what you're seeing with Najee Harris, which I would totally understand. DeAndre Swift, I'm comfortable with. I agree the ceiling is questionable, but I'm comfortable with it.
Do you like Swift more than Montgomery?
I have to say yes. I mean,
really?
Obviously, the Bears' offensive line is not that bad. It's not the Lions' offensive line, sure, but it's a unit that's got its feet under it, it looks like, in 2024. Scoring is everything here, obviously. Like, David Montgomery has a clear path to at least, 8-9 touchdowns, potentially more. But he does not have a path past, 25 receptions unless Gibbs misses significant time. It's just not going to happen. Like, the Lions paid everybody. So they're telegraphing very clearly to us, we are running it straight back. Everyone's going to do the exact same thing they did last year, and we're just going to try to get a different outcome in the NFC Championship game. So there's absolutely a place for Montgomery on your team, but you have to control for that based on your scoring. And a lot of people play half or full PPR now. So I'm okay with Swift. I don't love him. I don't hate him.
Wait, would you take a water bet on him?
Well,
a half PPR water bet?
Lay it on me. What are we talking about, Colt?
Half PPR, Montgomery versus Swift. Who has a better finish on the season? We can do points per game, assuming that.
I'll take points per game. Because
Swift is a good.
I'm not gonna take full. I'm not gonna take the whole.
I'll do points per game. We'll shake on it.
Let's air shake. Okay, water bed.
There we go.
Wait, did you say water bed? Do I have to buy you a water bed?
You have to buy me a water bed. I would really hate my back.
I made that joke last year too. You remember?
I do not, but I remember I won the other water bet that we had, and you had to do the entire podcast soaking wet.
Asterisk. There was offensive pass interference on
Hunter Henry versus Kyle Pitts.
Offensive pass interference. Next question.
Who's your running back that you're fading at ADP?
My fade is going to have to be Rachaad White. And again, gives me no pleasure to say so because he definitely saved my bacon in a couple leagues last year. But I'm going to have to basically credit that to the fact that Sean oh god. But I'm blanking. The rookie running back from Syracuse that they got as an undrafted free agent.
Tucker?
Yeah, Sean Tucker. Yeah, thank you for saving me. Yeah, there was rumblings like, oh, is Tucker a threat to Rachaad White? No, he was not whatsoever. And Rachaad White ate everything. But we now have enough data on Rachaad White to have real concerns about his efficiency. He goes for 3.6.5 yards per carry as a rookie. Only rebounds to 3.7 last year. The Bucs have had some offensive line issues, especially on the interior. The Bucs project to continue to have serious issues potentially on the interior of this offensive line. They've got good tackles, but the interior is not so good. So Canales gone. The tide for this whole offense is pulling back a little bit. So it's not to say you have to avoid your Buccaneers, but it's going to be more of a meritocracy now. And like Mike Evans, for example, who we know is a generational all-world talent, I'm not worried about Mike Evans. Baker Mayfield, Rachaad White, I am now concerned. Rachaad White, tied for second in the NFL in carries last year, okay? 272 carries. That's a lot. Could not get to 1,000 yards rushing even still. Bucky Irving, I mean, I'm not a big Bucky Irving truther.
Likewise.
But one of his, I mean, as soon as I saw his height, weight, and saw his tape, I was like, okay, I know who this guy's going to get comped to. And then he goes to the combine, and it's the Kyron Williams argument is going to be is Bucky Irving morning, noon, and night. If Bucky Irving, I'm not saying it will happen, but if, and it could happen, if Bucky Irving eats into Rachaad White's dinner at all, he's very risky at this price point as the RB13, 42 overall. The Swift, Montgomery, James Conner, running back tier that we were talking about, even Alvin Kamara, I like all those guys way more at their current price points than Rachaad White.
Oh, and they're later too. Yeah, yeah. So I could see how you could fill into that. I will say that he was a running back 7 last year, and it was mainly off of it wasn't because he was good. It was kind of like when you had Alvin Kamara when he came back from suspension. You didn't want to watch the games. You just wanted to take all those juicy fantasy points that were coming your way.
13 receptions for 19 yards.
Yeah. Wait, was that actually a stat line? Because I know it was something very similar.
No, he had 13 for I think 35. it was
That's
crazy.
Still horrible.
I lost to that in a week.
I believe it because, like I said, these guys are scoring fantasy points. So you're out on White, but you're not a fan of Bucky Irving. I'm also not a fan of Bucky.
Ouch.
And I'll say that like Rachaad White, it's interesting because I mean I'm not sold on James Cook. He had I think probably top 5 scrimmage yards last year. It's just going off the top of my head. Kenneth Walker. Explosive plays, but again, another guy I'm not 100% sold on. And then Pacheco, I think I would take Pacheco over White, but I think White's in that same tier for me, just because he's going to get all that work. I don't see anybody else that's going to get that work. He needs to keep the receptions up. I mean, he had 70 targets for 64 receptions. Like that's crazy close to catching everything, especially at that high of a volume.
True. No,
I'm okay with him at running back 13. I would prefer Pacheco, but again, we're still talking about guys who haven't reached 1,000 yards.
So you're the way you are on the way I was on Swift. You're similar on White. I totally respect it. I just saw so for the listeners, I knew who Colt was going to fade at quarterback and at running back. I did not know he was going to fade at wide receiver. So my reactions are going to be organic.
Yeah, feel free. I mean, like I said, we can agree and disagree on these. This is the point where we need to brainstorm and figure out like, hey, these are some of the facts. Why do you feel differently? And what do you think is different about going into the season? Mm-hmm. So my fade right now at wide receiver is Garrett Wilson. I have not drafted him anywhere. He is being drafted as a wide receiver 8 at the end of the first round. Okay, we are talking about a guy who has not missed a game in the NFL. In his rookie season, he was the wide receiver 19. He didn't miss a game last season. He was the wide receiver 32. Wide receiver 32. And he was drafted as a wide receiver 8 last season. Aaron Rodgers, yes, he got hurt. You are banking 100% on Aaron Rodgers that, one, he's healthy, which he's out there throwing. We see him in practice. But, like, how's his arm? How's his Achilles? Like, these are things that, he could still be leaning into. We saw Joe Burrow. He had, I think it was a hamstring injury or something like that, where he was absolutely horrible for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and everybody else there on the Bengals. But, like I said, Aaron Rodgers, he's 40 now. We haven't seen him throw all season. We're seeing him a little bit in training camp here right now.
Sure.
But if you look at Big Ben or Peyton Manning at 39 years old, like, time waits for nobody. And Aaron Rodgers is just another piece of the puzzle. But Garrett Wilson, like I said, wide receiver 8 last season is where he was being drafted. Ended as wide receiver 32. Absolute disaster of a season if you drafted him there because you had to start him each and every single week. He's very talented. Don't get me wrong. He's much like C.J. Stroud, where I think he's talented. I just think he's going way higher than he should be. I don't see a path for him to be the wide receiver 1. You're drafting him in the first round. That's something that I want to have, like a Tyreek Hill or I guess CeeDee Lamb, somebody like that, where he's tied to a great quarterback, shown, flashes and everything like that. If you believe Rodgers is back and he's Rodgers of old, then feel free. But since Garrett Wilson, just another little stat here, since Garrett Wilson has entered the league back in 2022, there are 21 wide receivers that have scored more fantasy points than him. Of the 21, only Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and A.J. Brown are being drafted ahead of him. So that's leaving a lot of other guys that are being drafted there behind him. I've got the list here in front of you. I've got some names highlighted. Do you think any of these names here, I'll feel free to rattle them off, but I've got some highlighted in green, like Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Waddle, Metcalf, Olave, Debo. I think all of those guys could produce the same as Garrett Wilson or more. Do you disagree on any of those, or what are you kind of seeing there? Because I feel like a lot of people were drafting him because he's the only target in town.
Mm-hmm.
He's the wide receiver 1 for the team, and some people were afraid of drafting like a wide receiver 1B, kind of like a Tyreek
Right.
Hill and Waddle situation.
Right.
So what do you think on it?
I think that Garrett Wilson is going to command a 28% target share all day long, and not seeing a lot of guys other than DJ Moore. Not seeing, and maybe Diggs. We'll see. We'll see what Diggs has left, and of course Adams. But other than that, there's a lot of guys on that list that have no hope of doing that. I got numbers for you, Colt. 292 targets in his first 2 seasons. Do you know who had that?
Probably no one else.
Justin Jefferson. That's how many targets Justin Jefferson had in his first 2 seasons. You know how many Garrett Wilson has had? 315. Okay, so Jefferson missed a couple games, but he's per game. Garrett Wilson is step for step target wise with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. I think he even has the edge on Chase in terms of how heavily their offenses attempted to feature them. The Vikings attempted to feature Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase much more successfully than the Jets did, because obviously a lot of Zach Wilson the last 2 years. I agree. We have huge questions about what Aaron Rodgers has left, for sure. And I'm avoiding Aaron. I'm not taking Aaron Rodgers anywhere. I don't buy that he's going to throw for 4,000 yards. I just don't buy it. But whatever he does throw, it is going through Garrett Wilson. It is coming. Like, what you're throwing is kind of similar to the Drake London argument, which is like he hasn't done it. Except, and with Drake London, that's valid. Garrett Wilson has done it to the extent that it was remotely possible with what he had given to him. Again, the Jets had one of the worst offensive lines in the league the last 2 years, the worst quarterback play in the league last 2 years. The average yards to go on third down for the Jets last year was like 8.2 yards to go to get a first down. The Cowboys were at like 6. Okay, so
Yeah.
like basically the Jets were just skipping first and second down most of the time. Like it was crazy. So we like you said, we know Garrett Wilson is good. We know the targets are coming. And everything else, I mean, you got to leave that up to the heavens at some point. Like, you got to go on what we know, which is what we know about Garrett Wilson we like. So, I agree. Now, I will say, I will be honest, like, I try to be science-minded, and I try to use logic and reason and all that. But there's a part of me that just says, you don't put your first rounder in a Jets uniform. You just don't do it. Like that's just you're asking for you're flaunting you're flaunting in the face of the fantasy gods. Like, there's a part of me that really thinks like, don't do that no matter what. But at a certain point you have to allow, like, okay, maybe it's time for the Jets suffering to at least take a break. At least take a 1-year break. Garrett Wilson's very good. I'm not scared to take him there. But I certainly don't begrudge anybody who's skittish of Rodgers. The offensive line looks to be much better, though. They get Tyron Smith. They get Elijah Vera-Tucker is back. They're all pro. I think he's all pro guard who missed a bunch of time last year. So they've had some reinforcements.
Yeah, like I said, Garrett Wilson. It's just it's a lot of the other guys. When we're fading them, it's either ADP or some of the talent that's going around them. This one, it's kind of a combination of the two. Like I said, wide receiver 19, wide receiver 32. You're talking about what do we know? That's what I know. I believe he's got to upgrade, obviously, in quarterback, even if Rodgers is washed, which I'm not. I want to see more Rodgers. I'm going to the Patriots Jets game. Like, I had something I would love to see, and say I've seen Aaron Rodgers play it in real life. So that's one thing there. But yeah, I would even venture to take like Marvin Harrison Jr. over him, just because I'd be willing to kind of like re-roll the dice, on the wide receiver.
I mean, it's risky. The price point is risky. Speaking of risky price points, my guy, I'm going to stick with who I went with in my fade article on the website, Brandon Ayuk. He's running as like the wide receiver 15, going about 26 overall on the blended ADP right now. But he's a good deal hotter than that on certain platforms, like on Sleeper, on Yahoo. He's like, the blend has him in the third. On those platforms, I'm seeing him comfortably like middle, late second round, even in half PPR. And this is one of the fade. This is probably the fade that I feel the most confident in, just because I feel like the basis of it is so has such strong math behind it. I'm not fading him because of the nonstop trade talks, which, by the way, based on everything that's happened over the last several weeks, Colt, what is your gut on what's actually going to happen here? Is Ayuk going to escape or not?
Yeah, I think the 49ers want to win it,
Yeah.
and I think they need Ayuk to win it. So I think he stays a 49er at least for this final season here. He's at practice, but he's not practicing. He's just out there kind of showing up, but not getting fined for it, which is kind of nice. So yeah, Ayuk. And he's going on as a wide receiver 15. And last season, he had a great season, mind you. He was a wide receiver 14. So, and that was his best finish thus far. Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed. So, not only is that kind of a big red flag there, but the trade rumors, that makes it just way worse for me. There's a lot of other good wide receivers that are going right next to him. Nico Collins, Deebo Samuel's a teammate there, sure. Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle. Like, there's some good talent that are right around him without any question marks.
Yeah, I mean, he manages 1,342 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. He churned that out on a paltry 105 targets, okay? So, for context, Cleveland's Elijah Moore had 104 targets, one less. He needed those to get to a whopping 640 yards receiving, okay? So, not even half of what Brandon Ayuk put out. And I know you're going to say, well, Luke, Brandon Ayuk is better than Elijah Brown, and that's true. I just checked my notes. It says right there, Brandon Ayuk is better than Elijah Moore. But even Tyreek Hill, who went for 1,800 yards last year, 1,799, he was only able to produce 10.5 yards per target, which is still an elite number. It's a true elite number one receiver type number. Brandon Ayuk vaporized Tyreek Hill per target. He goes for 12.8 yards per target. Even Jalen Waddle, who is like the argument for Brandon Ayuk here in 2022, Waddle goes for 1,356 yards as the number 2 fiddle in Miami. Even he was only able to get to 11.6 yards per target. So it's an unsustainably high number. Ayuk had 9 more targets in 2022, 300 yards less receiving, okay? So it's just, he was too good for the number of times the Niners threw the football to him. And Brock Purdy only threw it like 28 and a half times a game last year. So if that conveys, that's very risky. And even if it doesn't, what if Deebo Samuel stays healthy? What if Ricky Pearsall gets involved earlier than we're expecting? Like, it's just that plus like the acrimony between him and the Niners. It just makes me way too uncomfortable here. You named a lot of guys that at ADP, Nico Collins, even like Jalen Waddle. I feel just the floor scares me way less.
Yeah, 49ers, like I said, there's a lot of mouths to feed. They're typically highly efficient because that's how the offense rolls. But I like to lean a little bit more on the target volume, kind of like with the Garrett Wilson, right? Like, we know he's going to get the volume.
Right.
What he does with that, to be known. We need to figure that out. So,
yeah. All right, folks. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up, puts a bow on it for this week. What do we have on deck for people next week, Colt?
Next week, we have got a mock draft episode. So everybody, they're out there mock drafting. We're going to be right into the beginning of August. People are going to be doing all of their drafts here in August, just before the season starts. So we're doing a mock draft together. We're going to be doing one quarterback mock draft, kind of show you and tell you the mindset of where we are and what we're thinking when we make this pick. And it should be a fun time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been mocking a little bit, but to cross swords with you, sir, that will be a true test of my readiness for 2024.
It will be. It'll be really fun. And make sure you guys you can follow us there. Again, you can see us at Fantasy Index on X. You can find Luke at DLuke87, as well as myself _Colt Williams. And then we'll see you guys next week at the mock draft. I'm so excited for it, and it should be a lot of fun.
Should be a lot of fun. I will see you then, my friend.
See you then.
Bye. What am I doing?